Hey everybody, today we're going to be building Buddy, my pet corn snake's enclosure. So Buddy's enclosure, as you can see, is a glass enclosure, and I want to build something a little more custom, and it's going to be his permanent enclosure once I'm done with it. So let's go out to the wood shop and let's get things started. So we're in my workshop, and what we're going to be using today is 3/4 inch veneered plywood and try to incorporate some solid wood into this build as well. So the 3/4 inch plywood that I'm using is a veneered plywood. You can get this at Home Depot, Lowe's. The solid wood portion of the build, we're going to be using this 1 1/4 inch solid walnut. It does a good contrast between the dark and the light wood, and I think it'll turn out beautiful. Okay, let's talk about how we're going to put together Buddy's enclosure. Now, each one of the corners, we're going to be using 1 inch by 1 inch walnut, and that's going to be compared to the 3/4 inch plywood. It's going to be on all 4 sides. Now, our heating element for the base of our enclosure, the heating element that I chose is a Zoomed's heat element, and you can't use it on wood or plastic. It only can be used on glass. So what we're going to do for the bottom is we're going to cut out a section of the bottom and then insert a piece of glass in this area for the heating mat to adhere to. The top is going to be also out of 3/4 inch plywood, but it's going to be cut another opening to put our metal mesh that goes around each individual corner. Now, how we're going to connect the 3/4 inch plywood to the end pieces, we're going to be making pocket holes. Now, these pocket holes drill sideways into the wood at an angle to where you can hide the fasteners. So let's go ahead and get started on cutting some of the boards down to their final dimension and start putting this together. Now, my table saw does not have the 17 inches clear for how high Buddy's enclosure is going to be. So I made some brackets to put onto my table saw in order to give us a good clean cut. Now, to prep the boards before we get cutting, we're going to be using painter's tape, because the veneer that's on veneered plywood, when it goes through the table saw, on the back side of the wood where the teeth are coming down, it pulls the veneer off of the plywood. So we're going to be wrapping this where we're going to be cutting in painter's tape, and that will eliminate us having frayed edges. Now, as you see when we remove the tape, the edges are perfectly smooth. Another thing I should mention is when you're cutting multiple pieces of wood at a certain dimension, it's better to go ahead when you have everything set up to make all of your cuts at that dimension at the same time. Because when you cut a piece of wood at 17 inches and you make your cut and you change this and you come back later and set this at 17 inches, it's very, very difficult to get it the exact same at 17 inches. You may be a 16th, you may be an 1/8, but when you're putting your joints together, that 16th or an 1/8 of an inch definitely can see, and definitely you can make a difference. Now, before I get started on drilling holes and putting this together, I'm going to be taking our jig here to do our pocket holes for our screws, and taking a scrap piece of 2x4 and then some leftover 3/4 inch plywood in order to make sure that we don't drill too far into the plywood and split anything out, or going too deep and going through the back end of our walnut on our corner pieces. Now, I have our test piece here, and I have it set up to be within the 3/4 inch slot. So that'll give us 3/4 inches from the edge of our plywood to the piece we're buttoning up to. And we're also using 1 1/4 inch screws. So let's go ahead and do a test fit just to make sure everything is set up correctly before we get started on our pieces we're actually going to be using. So we'll take the jig, and for our test fit, we'll just put it on, make sure everything's lined up, and we'll just clamp it on. Now, the bit that comes with the set, it has a little space here at the end. This stop is where that 3/4 inch is going to be on our stop back here. Now, as you can see, it drills the slot in at an angle, and there's a stop back here where that drill bit is, to where when you slide the screw in, you can screw it into your other piece. So now these two pieces are joined together. It's nice and flush on this side. The screw doesn't extend too far and come out the back side, and it's going to be well hidden. So when we finish the inside of Buddy's enclosure, you're not going to see the screws. Now, before we start putting this together, we've got two different sides on here. Now, I like the grain that's on this side better, so when I stain it, it's going to end up with a marbling effect. Now, on this side of it, I already wrote side in. This side is going to get vinyl tile. It's neat, so when I clean out Buddy's cage, it won't seep through and go to the wood. So I've already wrote side in on this side. This is the side we're going to be screwing into. Now putting these together, we got our 1¼ by 1¼ square stock, but we're only using 3/4 inch plywood. So as you can see, this one's going to be a lot thicker than the rest. So what we're going to end up doing is having the inside of this right here flush with this side sticking out. Okay, so this is one side done. As you can see, when it starts to come together, we'll have this lip here, but on the inside, this is where we're going to put vinyl covering for inside of Buddy's closure. So that's all I'm going to be doing today in the workshop. I'm still new at YouTube. This is my first video, so I'm going to see kind of how things go. I'm still learning on how to set things up, how to prep things before I shoot, just so I can try to get things shooting smoothly. So I know it's going to be a struggle and a pain for some of my videos, but for today I just wanted to kind of go over about what I'm building and what I'm doing. So until next time, I'll see you then.